shared it on her Instagram.
Oh, that's so cool. I like that.
I thought that was so nice of her.
Yes. And the fact that we're actually, people are watching
I
is a
told you
little
people would
scary.
watch it.
What?
I told you people would watch it. We're just
Uh,
too odd for people not to watch it.
well,
We're just straight
yes.
up strange sometimes.
Yes. On truth to both odd and strange. I vote that we have, private cameras and we basically do a reality television show. We don't even need to be like one of those reality television shows that's scripted. I mean, that's just
No.
ridiculous, you know.
just just straight up everyday life is it's a trip. Also, is your hair in a middle part? What the hell is going on, Dad?
It is. Look at that. Unfortunately, the hair is starting to thin a little bit, so like I can see scalp, and that's a little annoying. By the way, and this has nothing to do with toasties, ghosties, or campfires, or legends, or cryptids. Um, but there is no gel in my hair. That's not gel. I'm not kidding.
What are you just sweating?
Yeah. So, in the real world where I do real work, it's picture day, and I'm wearing a tie and long sleeves. Hmm.
It's 67 degrees here right now.
Oh, shut the hell up. I mean, it's not 167 degrees here right now. It is currently 92 ambient, though. And the
Yeah.
pictures are being done on a turf field. So, yeah, it's super fun.
Who decided that? That's dumb,
Yeah, not me. That,
obviously.
that would be the answer. Not me. All right. So, our walking orders last time was
I
I was
forgot of them.
okay.
But
Well,
I
I was going to dig into Warwick Neck itself for ghosts and ghost stories, um, which I was not particularly successful in
really.
finding ghost stories. Well, documented ghost stories are quite difficult. There's a lot of people who have said that they've had experiences, particularly at Aldrich Mansion. I found out more about the Aldrich Mansion than I ever wanted to know. Starting with the fact that it was actually not originally owned by the Catholic Diocese of Providence. It was originally built by some senator.
Hmm,
Yeah, I know.
really?
I was like, wow, that's kind of different. I didn't know that. And then eventually taken over. And there are ruins on it, but now it's also ever since Meet Joe Black, which if you watched the last episode, I corrected myself because I said that Meet Joe Black was actually about the devil coming to Earth. It's actually about death coming to Earth. Who apparently takes on the visage of this recently dead person, who happens to look a lot like Leonardo DiCaprio,
Of course.
but thin Leo DiCaprio. And then he falls in love with this woman, and he doesn't want to be dead anymore. At least how I took it to understand it. It's weird. But after that, uh, they had renovated a good portion of the Aldrich Mansion, and now it's like a major wedding venue. Is one of the things that I learned.
Hmm.
But funny story is I had been looking at the stories of ghosts and the lighthouse, and I thought it was the lighthouse at the end of Warwick Neck Avenue that was the haunted one, and I found out that I was wrong. It was actually the ghost of Conimicut Point, um, and it's this lighthouse, and this is why I said I had things, and I got to pull this up real uh, fast.
I was gonna say, yeah, you said that there was some place that I had been.
Right. And so, yeah, I'm going to share my screen over to you because
If
uh,
it's just a picture of our old house, I'm gonna laugh really hard.
no, no, not really. All right. So if you look at, I'm assuming you can see it now. All right.
But I can,
You should be able to see the Lighthouse Friends and Conimicut
yeah, I
Lighthouse.
see
All
your
right.
Google page. Yeah.
Okay. So if you go over to this, and click on the map, as I just did.
Good demonstration. Good job.
Yes. And you see, I don't know who this person is over here, and I feel bad for them because they are now there. And so of course Google Earth has it in the middle of nowhere, right?
Yes.
Because it is there. Well, here, let's back up. Back up. Back up. Back up. Wait, why are you moving? I don't want you moving.
I just trying to back up.
I just want you to back up. What is happening here?
There you go.
There we go.
It's in the middle of the ocean.
It's out in the middle of the ocean. All right. I just want to point out this place over here.
Where?
Tillinghast
Okay.
Place. That should ring a bell in your head. There was a witch or a vampire named what?
I just talked about her, Sarah Tillinghast.
Right. And then
Conimicut
Point Park, which is over here. All right.
Yes.
And
isn't that the place we used to walk to or bike to from Tidewater?
So looking at when you change the layer look, Conimicut Point, what's here? Tidewater Drive. So
see, I remember.
Right. So Conimicut Point Lighthouse, I don't know, who's this poor family that got caught in Google Earth? Conimicut Point Lighthouse is in fact haunted. And it supposedly is that Nellie, the ghost that you were talking about a couple of episodes ago. Nellie, there was the confusion whether she was a witch, a vampire, or a ghost.
Everybody was very confused with that.
Right. So that's where she's supposed to haunt, which I thought was kind of very interesting. And that brought me to this, because then I started looking at Ghosts of Conimicut Point, because I was like, oh, what? I mean, we could probably
like right there.
Right. I mean, we could find
I actually know exactly where it is there, because I Zillowed it recently.
I Googled Earth it last night. They took out the front gardens your mom had put in. It was very sad. But anyways, this brought me up to this. And so this is a Twitter post from 2016. Matt Reed is clearly a news reporter for WCVB. All right. And WJAR. And this is called the Ghost Swing.
Yep. That's moving. Not in a swing motion though.
No. And of course the first comment is, oh, dumbass, it's the wind. Clearly you can see the trees moving in the background. I've watched this for far too long to say I don't see wind. I mean, even the other chairs that are kind of moving a little bit, as you can see over here, they're not moving nearly like this thing is. This thing is on its own, just going crazy. And the thing about it is, if you watch, it starts off smaller motions and it ends up in. So this is, this clip is 17 seconds long. And then I had the realization as I was looking at this, I'm staring at this in the background, the slide. And I'm thinking to myself, I know that slide. That's the slide that you used to go down. This was the park that we used to bring you and your brother to when we lived in Rhode Island.
Well, I was just thinking about the fact that I fell off that little arch thing a couple of times, remember?
Yes. Oh, that's right. That's the one that we used, those do have the bars. I can see that now.
Yeah.
That was the ones that we used to try and walk upright on. And I think maybe by the time you were 7, 6, or, well, I guess 6, because we left when you were about 6, that you were finally able to actually walk on it, over.
And we used to bring calzones there.
But
and eat them from Antonio's.
So last night,
go to Antonio's. Excellent place.
I was talking to your mom about this clip, and I said, "Hey, was it like that when we went there?" And she's like, "Well, I had heard, stories from other moms around the neighborhood that every so often, one of the chairs would just go, crazy, and just start swinging all on its own. And
Really
so,
cool. I wouldn't be surprised by that.
yeah, I mean, it was interesting. And like I said, there was there's always the commenters like, oh, it's nothing, but I mean, I'm working on a blog post for Toastie Ghosty. That's called Why Are They Always Blurry? you know and the reality is, I mean, like, so this guy, the story that he actually tweeted out at one point was that he had to wait around for the ghost chair to start going crazy, and then he got the thing. But yeah, I mean, so there was some things that I found that I thought were quite interesting, and the basics of it was that there's there's known haunted places in Warwick, excuse me, were the old veteran cemetery, the Aldrich Mansion, of course. It is believed that the guy, Senator Nelson W. Aldrich, who built this in the early 1900s, one of his kids apparently committed suicide by jumping off the balcony into the back near the harbor. And her apparition has been seen by employees often, as well as some visitors. But then there's also the Marriott Hotel, which is actually called the Fairfield Marriott Inn. There's been apparitions seen there, and doors closing, banging, which, by the way, I actually really want to include a clip from Ghostbusters, the 1984 movie, right there with the ghost librarian. But I don't know if that's a copyright strike, and I don't want to get any copyright strikes yet. Yeah. And then, of course, Conimicut Lighthouse. I did look in the databases on different hauntings. There's a lot of information out there about hauntings in Rhode Island in general. But they seem to be pretty concentrated to Warwick, Providence, Westerly, Exeter, Hopkinton. Those seem to be like the places that mostly had.
Well, they have the Payton house in Coventry.
The what?
The Payton house.
Oh, is it a house that causes pain?
No, not quite. It was a house that was built in 1691, though.
Okay.
By Samuel Bennett. And then, interestingly, the house changed hands just about every 50 years to a new family. Up until it reached the Payne family in 1866, where it stayed in the family for 87 years. I was trying to find, they mentioned that they have like ghost tours in the house on their website and everything, because it's now a museum. But I've been trying to find more specific stories of it, and I haven't been able to find anything. And it seems each owner kind of added something to it. So at first it was kind of like a one-room situation, and then it was a sawmill, and then they added a tavern, and then they expanded the house and like all this stuff. So it was like a fairly large center of the community. It had its first election there in for Coventry and all this stuff. But I guess employees have been like slapped, and they hear like whispering and footsteps, doors slamming, that type of stuff. Don't understand why they're being slapped though. Like, I tried to find more about the history of the house to see if anybody had been like, brutally murdered, but nothing really came up. Like, there was nothing particularly extraordinary about the place. Like, it was just there,
So I found another one that I thought was kind of interesting, and I'm hoping that I can get away with this. This is fair use. I'm saying this to the tech overlords. Oh. This is fair use. So there's a movie. Let me see if I can find this. I'm sharing again. Sharing is caring. There's a movie called The Conjuring, yes, which is a horror movie.
I specifically skipped this house, actually.
Yeah. So it is it's a slow Wi-Fi day here. The Circle of Death. Keep circling.
All right, it's 9:18. We're headed down into the cellar where the doors just opened on its own. Give us a sign that you want to communicate with us.
I'd prefer not to.
Nothing.
I want to communicate with it.
What are you guys?
Well, we've been called ghost hunters, paranormal researchers.
But we prefer to be known simply as Ed and Lorraine Warren.
There's someone here that would like to talk to you.
There's something horrible happening in my house.
It's November 1st, 1971. I'm sitting here with Carolyn Perrin, who, with her family, has been experiencing supernatural occurrences. You picking up anything in here, hon?
Something awful happened here, Ed.
What is it? Whatever Lorraine sees.
So the thing about this, of course, is this is supposedly based on a true story. And I will tell you that for me, this movie scared me. When I was 11 years old, the movie Poltergeist came out. And the movie Poltergeist, to put it bluntly, scared the crap out of me. And it was before there was CGI and all this other stuff. But that movie scared the crap out of me. The Conjuring scared me more. And I was 43 when this movie came out. And I didn't watch it for a couple of years. I watched it on, I guess, Prime Video or one of the streaming services that we had back then. And I got about to the point where I realized I recognized the road. And I went, nope. So
that's enough for this.
So yeah, the Conjuring house, the house that the Conjuring is based on, is in Burrillville, Rhode Island, and it is supposedly haunted up the wazoo. And this actually brings me to something that I was thinking about while researching this. I remember years ago, your aunt, the one in Connecticut, she and I
got
were
a new
talking.
dog, by the way.
Oh, they did. Oh, good. They should. Every house needs puppies. Anyways, she asked me a question about what do you do if? And it was one of these things of, she had a person who had reached out to her as a potential client. And although she doesn't really do personal law issues, you know, she does do some pro bono work. And it was a person who had been sold a house in Connecticut that was haunted.
Yeah.
And the person who bought the house didn't just claim that it was haunted, but that it was specifically haunted by a demon, like it was a demonic entity in the house. And
now along in Connecticut, you have to disclose if the house is haunted.
Yes. It's like the meme, let's see if I can grab it real quick.
You can always put it in the overlay if you have to.
Yeah, I can do it that way. It's there's this particular meme out there that is that it's the one with the piano that says
oh yeah, definitely not haunted piano for sale.
Right, definitely not
Hasn't
haunted.
been played by human hands in 6 months.
Right. And then there's also there's a one with for sale sign that says not haunted, and we all know. Right, I guess if it's in Connecticut, then now they have to actually display that it is you know, it is haunted or not haunted. But the definitely not haunted signs in Connecticut makes sense. But if you see that in other places, you know, it's kind of like the meme of the person who's selling a house across from a neighbor from a cemetery, and it says neighborhood very quiet. You know, yeah. Well, I hope so.
Say good.
But in Rhode Island, apparently, maybe not.
Yeah, no, definitely not. I did actually see some of the stories about the Conjuring house. I specifically avoided it because I am a big wimp.
Okay.
And therefore I said, I'm good. Thank you. So I do not dare to enter the house. I'm good. I don't even really want to watch from a distance.
So I also found out that the General Stanton Inn in Charleston
Oh, I saw that.
is on the National Registry as being a haunted place, where employees in particular, when it was the restaurant, and the name of the restaurant is escaping me, so I'll put it in an overlay when it comes back to me. But they that's where we celebrated my mom and dad's 25th wedding anniversary, by the by.
Really?
Yep. But the big one there apparently is the mantle, the fireplace mantle has like drinks that will shift and everything.
Very interesting.
Yeah, and it's interesting to me. It's also, I mean, and again, you know, you walk through the comments on any video or any article, and everybody's like, oh, this is BS and blah blah blah. My challenge to anybody who feels that way, that it's just BS, is to simply get up, take your stuff, and go into that building in the dark at night. Basically, I want you to all Josh Gates it. I want you to go in there with your digital recorder and try and pick up your EMFs and your EVPs and see if anything is knocking, shall we say, because we all remember that we are all basically wusses when anything happens at night, you know. And you don't always have explanations. I mean, it's up there with, I remember a particular male colleague of mine in Washington, D.C. saying, because we were talking about things that go bump in the woods. And I remember one of our other colleagues was, you know, he was just deriding us, you know, just like, oh my God, how can you know, it's Tom O'Mara with his big eyebrows like flapping at you.
I was gonna say, was it a particular math teacher?
And he, you know, he's just like, and I remember big JC turning around to him and saying, how many hours a week do you spend in the woods? And O'Mara saying something along the lines of, hours a week, I might spend 2 hours a year. Yeah, I bike across the country, kind of stuff. And you know, JC saying, well, I spend, you know, hours every week. He's like, you know, during deer season, I'm out there for 8 hours a day, and you know, turkey season, I'm out there 8 hours a day over the weekends. And he's like, anybody who spent enough time in the woods knows that eventually you're going to hear something you don't know what it is, and you're sitting there, and this is true. I mean, I've literally experienced this, where you hear every noise and you expect to hear, you hear the you know, you hear the bobwhite over here in the corner, and you have of a blue jay, and you have the whoop of a you know, mourning dove or an owl, pick it up, and then all of a sudden you're like,
Who did that?
nope. I don't know who that was. And you know, 9 times out of 10, it is just an animal you haven't run across. But that 10th out of 10 time is when you go, I still don't know, you know.
Yeah, like I'm not into this one.
It's sort of like that time that you go to a cemetery and you go 9 times. So there's a cemetery near St. Michael's Church in Pawcatuck, Connecticut, and most of my family that has passed on that's where they're interred, because frankly, you shouldn't inter anybody who hasn't passed on. You know,
I was gonna say, that's how you get like scratches on the inside of coffins type situation. Like,
and so while we're out there, you know, you got, you know, Aunt Gloria's death, you have my mom's death, you have, you know, all these different people who have died.
we're just like saying names now. We gave up.
Yeah, the whoops sign just has to come out again, and you know, we're out there for these funerals, and you know, I don't know, I've probably been in that cemetery over 100 times, but there's 3 times that I can remember going in there, and every hackle on the back of my neck went, and you get that little spiny feeling up here where you feel like something's prickling you in the top of the head, and I'm like, something's different right now, and I don't know what it is.
Something's not quite right.
Yep. Well, I always
Yeah.
felt weird anyways in cemeteries. It's the same with the one on Wheeler Road, because you're walking on some dead person.
Yeah, well, the Wheeler Road one freaked me out because of the feather incident. So
Yeah. Well, we're going to discuss that when we do Connecticut. Um, if I remember, one of the two of us have pictures
I do.
of the feather. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I have pictures. I'm pretty certain I have a picture of the feather. I looked up those pictures the other day to send to my author friend. She's writing a book about not she writes fiction, but she's basing it out of a New England town, and there's like witches and stuff.
Yeah. Well, I was also thinking, like there's a point where we're going to reach where we're going to be talking more about personal experiences and everything. And I've always wondered about the picture. If you know the picture in what the hell's that theater? Is it Arcadia?
Altoona.
No, Altoona. Is that the one? Yeah.
I've got the picture.
I have the picture
I have
too.
it saved.
And there's
That theater.
there's arguments to be made about how the picture came about, but more importantly, I'm a little concerned about opening old wounds and other things with the stories there. But it's also, I think it's something that we need to do is look at evidence as we continue on in this podcast. Like I think that we definitely need to. I think there's some things that we could debunk. And in fact, I have one for next week that I'm thinking of, specific to my 4 favorite friends in the woods. That I have that, they purport this was this, and eventually they debunked themselves. By the way, I have to give them credit. But it took place in Maine.
So are we moving to Maine next week, or are we moving to Connecticut?
I thought we would go north for a little bit. Because Maine's got some nice one. The Algonquin Playhouse is supposed to be haunted up there. Bar Harbor is like, but there's tons now of Bigfoot sightings in Maine. So I thought I'm going to go in that direction personally.
Hold on though, I have a ghost story from.
Yeah, no, go on. Sorry.
I couldn't remember the town that started with an F that you wanted me to look up. So
Fosta.
Oh, that's kind of what I thought it was, but I couldn't really find. Like I found a little bit, but it wasn't like,
Mm-hmm.
But in Exeter, that's where the vampire is buried, by the by. And supposedly that graveyard is haunted. But I didn't really want to go into that too much because I already covered her in the first episode. So instead, I went to the lad school. Which was built in 1908 by Joseph H. Ladd, for the feeble-minded. And that included anybody who was a criminal, and those deemed unfit for society. So it could be literally like, she showed her ankle, criminal, toss
right.
The school was closed in 1986. I don't know why I keep going back to 18, whatever. But I'm honestly surprised it made it that long, because in 1955, a 20-year-old murdered a 9-year-old disabled ward of the state, like in the school, and the school remained open, and that's just confusing to me. But it was constantly plagued by low staff numbers and overcrowding. It had, like, I think I mentioned by 1950 it had over 1,000 pupils, for lack of a better term, but it was more treated as like a mental ward, right? And it wasn't a large place. Like, you can see pictures of it online. It's not a huge place. Over 1,000 people crammed in there. You had people dying left, right, and center. So once it was closed in 1986, there's been several reports of hearing phantom footsteps, moaning, crying, whispering, doors closing and locking despite the doors not having locks on them. So they shouldn't be able to get stuck. They're like swing doors, and they will be essentially locked. Shadows in the woods of people walking by. And apparently electronics go absolutely haywire. Like, if you're driving by, there's been a ton of like local reports of people's cars just absolutely stopping to work. Like, the radio will start going fuzzy in and out, alarms start going off, the car's lights will flicker on and off, and then be fine once you get beyond the grounds. Yeah.
Well, that's interesting.
I don't like notifications. It drives me crazy.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's open to be like toured or not. I think it used to be, but I don't think it is anymore. They do have a website, and the first picture that comes up, you look at it, you go, yeah, that's haunted. Like, you don't even need to like read the whole thing. You're just like, yep, correct.
Yes.
Like, that is a freaky looking building.
Yeah. So one, as the countdown begins, one of the things I did want to mention is our favorite band of Rhode Islanders who are into the paranormal, of course, who had an office right at the end of the road that we lived on when you were a little girl. The Taps. They, of course, have their show on what used to be on, I think, Discovery. I don't know if it still is. It's somewhere. It lives in streaming, definitely. Called Ghost Hunters, and of course they
not Coast Hunters. They don't need to hunt for the coast.
Yeah, it's pretty easy to spot.
Yeah.
But one of the things that they did was they went to the Westerly Library.
Oh yeah, I did see that. I also saw the City Hall thing.
And yeah, I might actually drop a clip in now. Because now, and it is an interesting clip because there's movement that happens in the Westerly Library, and I will tell you, as a person who frequented the downstairs area of Westerly Library when I was a child, because that's where they kept all the paranormal books, was in the haunted area.
Thinking
by the way,
knew it was up.
also recorded a Christian music album with the local talent there as well in the top half of it, and everybody was like, yeah, this place is freaky, man. But I thought that was cool. But also Amy Bruni, who is one of the world's most well-known ghost hunters and paranormal or parapsychologists, I guess they're called, actually also lives in Rhode Island, and I just thought that was kind of fun. So a little shout out to Amy Bruni and Rhode Island for that.
I did want to update our family's haunted house there that was on Blackstone over there. I know I told you about it last night, but they made it in, they renovated it and changed it and like added additions and made it into a multi-family home now. And I pity the people who live there, especially since, according to Zillow, they're paying $1,900 a month to live in a house with, I am sure, a very ticked off ghost. Like, that ghost has got to be pissed, because that ghost was pissed if you changed anything in that house. Like, you painted a wall and it was like,
if it is true that it is multifamily and they have multiple families, and also it is true that the reason why your grandma didn't seem to suffer the wrath of the ghost being the homeowner, or maybe the ghost was just nice to her because of Grampy Mick not being there anymore. Who knows what actually was going on with that. Yeah. I don't think he's gonna be happy.
I saw that on Google Earth last night, and I just about fell over. I was horrified. It's not even like lightly changed. Like, there is complete sections of the house, and it's like they put a skylight in the attic rooms, or one of the attic rooms, and I cannot imagine that this is a good plan. Somebody looks like it looks like they turned the carriage house into an apartment, like, specifically.
Yeah, I saw that too.
No,
in fact, one of the overlays from last episode was from Redfin, I think it was. Shout out to Redfin if that's a copyright issue. But it was just a screen grab of the new look of the carriage house, and I was wondering if they had renovated the top, which is what Todd and I wanted to do anyways.
You couldn't pay me to live in that house.
No, but we also we spent a lot of time there when you were a little girl, and everything I ever saw in that house made me realize I never wanted to live in that house as long as I lived.
Well, no, I feel so damn bad for the people who are renting it, especially for $2,000 a month. Like, oh yeah, this is my ghost roommate.
Well, I guess my other thing was like, my hat's off to your grandmother on this one, and that is she lived there by herself for like 5 years.
Like, no,
I have trouble staying in our house. I did have the when we had the big greenhouse on Tidewater Drive, I did have that night where I was working on the electricity before we moved in, and I swore I saw a little girl in a white nightie go running across the kitchen, and I actually turned to look for your mom, thinking that she had brought you. And I was like, wait, but Megan's only crawling, she's not walking yet. and like really getting confused. And I actually, vaguely considered calling your mom, being like, you didn't come to the new house tonight, did you? But then she would have been like, you haven't been drinking, have you? And then I don't know how I could have answered that question. Because, I probably had wine with me. Let's be honest. So yeah. All right. So I want to go up north to Maine. There's and I think there's a couple of video grabs I want to do for this next episode. So we'll tease this. One is I guess what they now call UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomenons.
As opposed to a UFO.
Right. Oh, well, now they just say it that way because it sounds more scientific. And I'm definitely, I'm going to be hitting the hairy man up there a little bit. And also one of my favorite things that ever happened with a Bigfoot investigation, where people were 100% convinced it was one thing and it turned out to be something else. But bully to these people, they actually admitted it on air that they had been fooled by a sound. So I liked that.
I want to see if I can track down a sea legend.
I think if you look into Bar Harbor, I seem to remember there being a very long sea serpent that's involved in, it's either Massachusetts or Maine, but there's definitely a sea serpent story out there.
I'll look for it. I know there's definitely some in not sea serpents, but some sea legends based out of my least favorite Floridian town.
Yes. Well, there's
I'm
also a ghost
city.
pirate ship. Yeah, I think next episode we do have to talk a little bit about October and how we're going to do October, because we've been in now two different states, but now we're going to jump all over the country for a little bit.
But we spent
I'm very excited about this.
in Rhode Island.
That's also true.
We were supposed to do one per state.
Oh, really?
4 times in Rhode Island.
I warned you when we started this. You get me going. I can go for hours. It's like that meme. Name that one thing that you can talk about for 30 minutes without notes. And I'm going, name me 7 things that I can go 7 hours and it won't stop. Oh, we're less than a minute. So we need to sign off. Thank God for the ticker. Otherwise we'd go forever. Bye.
Bye.